участники семинара. Мы вас приветствуем.
Good afternoon, dear friends, dear participants of the seminar. We welcome you at this significant day. Today is our last seminar in 2021, and by correspondence, it's not simple seminar. These are conclusions from the first stanza of Zion, the huge amount of material with key moments from all 9 slokas of the first stanza. Our seminar is successful, and there are many views on YouTube, views of all seminars, and Theosophical quiz is a video forum where we answer questions from our participants. So, dear friends, today we present review of the whole first stanza, all key moments from Slokas, Esther, Pockrandt, Australia, Bowden, Australia, Kolganov, Sergey, PhD and professor of Moscow Aviation University, Madam Catalina Isaza Cantor, Theosophical Society of Colombia. And right now I present you interpreters who will provide connection with the whole world. These are our interpreters, Daria Gasanova, Alexander Bobko, Sergey Nasetkin. Thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for providing subtle and deep moments to us today for this review you are going to make. And I think our English-speaking guests will listen this seminar right now live and in the recording. Thank you so much, the technical support. Thank you to everybody who has joined us. And I present for the entrance word Mr. Vladimir Yarov, Moscow School of Theosophy, President of Adamant Lodge, Theosophical Society of Russia. Welcome to everybody at this last seminar this year. And that is the year of the white ox that drew the conclusion of the teaching wheel. And this conclusion of the teaching wheel is expressed in the fact that right now we already live in the year of the black tiger. The black tiger on his own is the symbol of birth, and the black is the color of the element. The element is water or akasha. This is the month of the yellow boar, the week of the black mouse, and the day of the blue goat. As usual, we start from the day of the blue goat and can say that this goat is in parameter direction, symbolizing the turn of the teaching wheel. The goat itself symbolizes the pure thought. The pure thought can only be there when we are in a state of love. And when we are there, we are sincere or pure. Our aspirations are pure. And Kriya Shakti power or power of thought is therefore quite accurate in order to reveal something that will come out definitely as the force creating the common good. Today, the thought of the day of HPB in the Gems of the East is the following: do not act as if you had 10,000 years to throw away. Death stands at your elbow. Be good for something while you live, and it is in your power. That is a perspective we have. It's given for today to us, and it means that we should accurately imagine that our life is so short, and first and foremost, we do not know when our life ends, so we should be fast enough to awaken our consciousness and to be part of the evolution. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Anidana. Thank you for having positive direction of today's seminar, and we will be in these directions and these energies for 2 hours. Please do not leave us, because at the end we'll have the commentaries from the scientific group, conclusions, and final presentation animation about the first stanza. So the seminar, the International Scientific Seminar devoted to the Secret Doctrine, declared open, and it's about the first stanza of the end. And we invite the first speaker, Esther Pockrandt, Theosophical Society of Australia, Lodge, Association Coast. Please, dear Esther, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Good evening it is here, and I think maybe good afternoon for many of you. I'll just upload my slide. All right. Well, thank you very much for having me. And again, a huge shout out of thank yous to all the organizers, translators, all the behind the scenes workers, and all presenters over the whole series of the research into this enigmatic yet profound stanza 1. And I can see all your names, you lovely interpreters. I applaud you. And I want to say thank you for troubleshooting me today. That was just awesome. Last minute panic. Again, my Theosophy colleagues, being near midnight session for us on Christmas Day, although many probably asleep by now, except for Barry Bowden, I see, joining me tonight, send you our warmest sacred greetings, season's greetings, and I personally am honoured and humbled to have been asked to contribute yet once again. May it be of some worth. In this, my overview of stanza 1, I will not be quoting extensively from the commentaries, nor from the proem, nor will I be showing the slides of each stanza, each sloka, although they are sure worthy of contemplation often. Someone once said there's a difference between a freedom, intuitive, free-flow style and knowledge, intellectual analysis style of questioning. I'd like to focus on the free mind aspect of our questioning. Some call it the mystic's way. For me, it is the gardener's, the child's, or nomad's way of deep listening. In the short 20 minutes, and I'm bound to go over time, I will attempt to touch on the following. I won't read them all, but I would like to end with a word about Australia and give the final word to our elders, our Aboriginal elders. Artists of all genre attempt to make the invisible visible in this their mystic way also. I've inserted some of the visual artworks of 2 perhaps only now recognized artists, women's theosophists whose artworks are in the Stockholm Museum and many held in the Australian Theosophical Headquarters Gallery, Hilma af Klint and Rona Scott, respectively. You will see their artworks in some of what I've written in my commentaries. I will leave the meaning-making of their works to you. Both these women artists were focused on their personal intuiting of the secret doctrine and the stanzas. May their contributions add to our process. Could the oral traditions of our Australian Aborigines, stories of the dreamtime, the practice of deep silence, dadiri, that allowing of unfoldment, that mystic way, still much misunderstood and undervalued, not also shed some light on our study? If only the eyes could see, the ears could hear that voice in the silence. Is this the Dhamma hinted at, still closed in us now as we study? Even if skeptics question the authenticity of antiquity and the spiritual scientific worth of the stanzas, and hence the value of the secret doctrine, this inquiry, which it cannot help but engender, hopefully nevertheless, is healthy and again a reminder to go beyond words. Every teacher too knows that teaching is not about immediate results. It's all about sowing seeds. The visionaries who scribed the stanzas did just that. Learning as we are doing now is picking up these seeds someone has left for us to find and water. Seeds lie dormant even through prolonged periods of drought, till favorable conditions arise for them to sprout, and they do. The many seemingly desert-like landscapes of Australia are proof of that. With the slightest sprinkle of rain, the desert is a colourful sea of wildflowers. Our Australian Aborigine elders know this well still and maintain a culture of allowing and waiting patiently. Hopefully, there will be and there will remain enough time for one such wisdom share of one of our elders. Which seeds to nurture is the art, though, isn't it? So as not to end up with a field of thorns. Similarly, to distinguish between head learning and soul wisdom, the eye from the heart doctrine requires discernment, viveka, and vigilance, not to judge, requires yet to know, to recognize weeds that might contaminate an otherwise abundant flowering desert landscape. Yet each weed does have its purpose. It's all about balance, restorative agriculture, even as we engage with the stanzas. What a metaphor. Restoring balance, restoring soul wisdom. Is the dogma this seed? Perhaps is this the power of this first stanza, which ends with the first question, where is the dogma? The first seed question, is it a personally directed one also? Where is our spiritual eye in this study process? Or are we just quoting others? Is this perhaps why stanza 2 seems to be so very similar in content to the first, repeating much of the first, even though it moves from a narrative style of what was not to now asking more questions in its progression of the theme of where is? Opening our minds to intuitive inquiry, is it to drive home to us through negation, the emptying of the mind of all we think we know, to unlearn in order to grow and unveil perception in its new emptiness, to finally blossom into the open mindset of the mystic, to open to a new knowing, the vrittis, the chatter of our mind stilled, emptied of all form as we enter deeper into the stanzas, wordless, conceptless. Is that even possible? Can we recall those heart pictures by William Blake in Auguries of Innocence, which forever changed our perception of life, of ourselves, the world we thought we knew? When we do, the stanzas come to life right before the humble gaze of our eyes, those eyes of innocence, the eyes of wonder of a child. We recognize the seed that is planted in us in stanza 1. The stage is being set, opening us for what is yet to come, and even more fantastic indeed, to see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wild flower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. A robin redbreast in a cage puts all heaven in a rage. In the poem of The Secret Doctrine, Madame Blavatsky reminds us, indeed, it must be remembered that all these stanzas appeal to the inner faculties rather than to the ordinary comprehension of the physical brain. Have not the myths and legends all over the world inspired generations? Have not modern tales of magic like Alice in the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll, of awe and wonder, or the books written in the name of Anastasia, sown seeds of utopias of living in harmony and cooperation with the wild world? Have not the fantasies of sci-fi like Doctor Who, Avatar, and Space Odyssey, or the Matrix spawned ideas of futuristic lifestyles where these all blend with the cyber world, alas, maybe also creating the potential for even more Mayavic confusion? Helena Blavatsky was reported as having once replied to a student's question, where or what are 3 most important qualities of a student, to which she replied, common sense, a sense of humor, and more common sense. Let us explore some of the structural elements then that set the stage in stanza 1, the night of the universe. And maybe you can remember these because as other speakers tease this out, you will maybe remind this color coding that I've here. This color code of frequent occurring words I found useful to see patterns emerge, a pattern that builds upon itself like all the negations in purple of what is not, the recurrence of the number 7 in gold, phrases like once again that indicate cyclicity, a coming future, in blue, such as not yet, of things yet to come, white bolded capitals denoting the subject being elaborated and the mindset being expanded upon in each sloka. As we gloss over these, they are like facets of a diamond, each cut illuminating another angle, adding to the prism of colors, the rainbow. The night of the universe where naught was, not yet. We take note also of the numbers 3, 4, 7, and 9, according to esoteric numerology, and some of you will have pointed this out too, or will as the evening caresses. They have special values, and I'm wondering if there is a deliberate correspondence with the content of these respective shlokas, of course, in a deconstructive sense. 3 denotes the Trinity, the universal mind, but which was not. 4 denotes all the potentialities of manifestation, but which also were not. And 3 plus 4 equals 7, a spiritually significant number, the 7 bodies of the human, for example, the 3 forming those higher, buddhi, illuminated qualities, and 4 being the manifested, earthbound 4. I will not repeat the shlokas as you will know them. What is left is the number 9, but I'll come to that later. In the meantime, I will let the proem, Adya edition of The Secret Doctrine, speak to sum up the narrative style, the build and structure of the stanzas. The stanzas, therefore, give an abstract formula which can be applied mutatis mutandis, which means with the necessary changes having been made to all evolution in an ascending scale till the mind reels and is exhausted in the effort. The 7 stanzas represent the 7 terms of this abstract formula, and stanza 1 describes the state of the one all during pralaya, before the first flutter of reawakening manifestation. A moment's thought shows that such a state can only be symbolized. To describe it is impossible, nor can it be symbolized except in negatives. Unlike any dream state where the body still is, that cycle of slumber where no thing is, ever was or will be, and that pregnant question in Shloka 9 does leave us hanging for more in suspense. Indeed, all of stanza 1 can be seen as a metaphor for the meditation process, can it not? And stanza 1 ends with the 9th shloka, with that first pregnant question I mentioned earlier that stands out for me above all in the stanza, hinting at that parallel process, hence the cause for my focus for the remainder of this talk. But where was the dogma? Where indeed? Is this the holy grail, the philosopher's stone we all seek and lost somewhere along the line? Reminded here perhaps also to cultivate again before we proceed, lest we forget to water that seed. Incidentally, in numerology, 9 is a number of completion. It is said to symbolize the culmination of wisdom and experience, and yet, on the other hand, would already suggest both a surging of energy from endings into new beginnings, hinting at spirals of endless evolution with periods of rest and renewal, beginningless, endless cyclic motion. Does shloka 9 fit this? Completion? What is complete? Perhaps our minds are emptying well with the constant netty. It is not this, it is not that, training us. Are we now getting closer to an understanding of what is or could be other than what we ever thought, conceived of before? Our minds opening. Are we reminded here perhaps again of this, our spiritual eye, before we proceed, lest we forget? This parallel process of the in of inquiry within the N of inquiry. Those myths and legend of old Dreamtime stories, fairy tales of then and now, are undoubtedly all metaphors beyond words, beyond word expression, showing us glimpses of a beyond of more. The stanzas of Jian are no exception in how they entice us to expand our perception. There is power in narrative, in metaphor. Gerhard Hauptmann, quoted by Joseph Campbell in Creative Mythologies, The Masks of God, remarks, Dichten heißt hinter Worten das Urwort erklingen lassen, which translated means writing poetry consists of letting the primordial concept, the word, resound from behind the word. Is that not the art, not only in poetry, in all the arts, where words and paint, stone, wood, craft materials, or clay and music notes remain but poor substitutes, personal approximations for expressing the primordial, the beyond, that which is invisible, without sound, without form, the Urwort, intuitors into the indescribable, the Dharma, opening the spiritual eye. And yet, this personal exploration in no matter what medium is perhaps more profound a learning, a sharing of the meditatively immersed mind than the mere recitation of historic and scientific facts, of words, of things out there. Artworks by Hilma af Klint, Sweden, 1861 to 1944, and Rona Scott Abbott, Australian artist, 1934 to 2006, were inspired by the stanzas of Jian and by the secret doctrine. To quote Joseph Campbell again, for we move each in two worlds. Are we not doing that now? Creative artists are mankind's awakeners to recollection, summoners of our outward mind to conscious contact with ourselves, not as participants in this or that morsel of history, but spirit in the consciousness of being. And he continues, their task, therefore, is to communicate directly from one inward world to another in such a way that an actual shock of experience will have been rendered, not a mere statement for the information or persuasion of a brain, but an effective communication across the void of space and time from one center of consciousness to another. With the stanzas and discussing our understanding of them, we are at such a point of moving between and into worlds, as expressed in these lines of the same work, between the conception and the creation, in the creation and the response falls the shadow. Madame Blavatsky reminds us also not to follow another's meaning-making of what she has written, translated, and shared, but to develop our own intuitive faculties for true understanding of the esoteric, to make that bridge between the manifested world and the Urwort, the unseen, for an effective communication, as HPP puts it, across the void of space and time from one center of consciousness to another. Where is our spiritual eye? Can we be in that state described in stanza 1 and in the poem as we open to the unknown, devoid of all attributes, beyond all thought or speculation? Lest we forget in our enthusiasm and become like the blind men in the elephant who end up disputing, everybody proclaiming they now know what an elephant looks like. Hopefully we are safeguarded from such folly by the narrative style of stanza 1 of not this, not that, hinting at the emptiness of all, and yet of total pregnant fullness each of our views just one tiny piece of the whole, weeds and all. Let us allow the art of the mystics to speak some more on the stanzas. On the far left is Rona Scott. Exist in and of itself alone, untouched by aught within its bosom, create or uncreate, the causeless cause of spirit and of matter. It was and ever will be. And on the far right, Rona Scott again, the 7 ways to bliss were not, nor yet the causes of world sorrow, for no soul subsisted to produce its glamorous snares. 7 paths there are to blissful non-existence. As yet they were not, for the cosmic realms were but an archetypal proto-thought embedded deep within divinity. And then in the center, Hilma af Klint, the swan, painted in 1914 or 15. Kalahansa, the swan, has a dual meaning. Exoterically, it is Brahma, who is the swan, the great bird, the vehicle in which darkness manifests itself to human comprehension as light and this universe. But esoterically, it is darkness. Darkness itself, the unknowable absolute, which is the source. And this comes from Transactions in Collected Works. From the Proem, the Occult Catechism, Rona Scott has this vision. What is it that ever is? Space, the eternal anupadaka, parentless. What is it that ever was? The germ in the root. What is it that is ever coming and going? The great breath. In the Australian Aboriginal dreaming stories also of the great creator spirit Biami tell of the deep slumber before everything was. When we look closely, Biami carries on his chest, sometimes also depicted under each of his arms, as in this particular picture, it's actually a cave painting, respectively 4 and 3 vertical lines, adding up to 7 in total. Some Dreamtime stories say this denotes the 7 tribes he's watching over. Interesting. The great Australian Aboriginal creation Dreamtime stories are reflected in many of the language groups start, for example, with there was a time when everything was still. All the spirits of the earth were asleep, or almost all. It is interesting to compare this with Slokas 6 and 7, respectively, to be outbreathed by that which is and yet was not, rested in eternal non-being, the one being. Lindsay Murtagh in Common Elements in Creation Myths says, despite being separated by numerous geographical barriers, many cultures have developed creation myths with the same basic elements. Should we in our Theosophy circles perhaps take more interest in these Dreamtime stories? And before I conclude my contribution to this research project into stanzas, I would like to add the voice of the wisdom of our Aboriginal elders whose oral traditions for all to read from, the wisdom in the stars written in the landscape, the memory code passed on from generation to generation over the 40,000 plus living dream time. I always wonder too why this wisdom remains still largely unexplored, unacknowledged in our circles. Is it that it is too simple for our Western intellect we take so much pride in? Humanity in this century could learn a lot. I dream of the day more of our Theosophical circles walk with our Indigenous elders. Shirley Nichols, who you may all remember is also a theosophist, quotes the Venerable Nandishvara Nayake Tero in a paper appearing in the Dreamtime Mysticism and Liberation Shamanism in Australia, a publication of 1978. She recounts that Dr. Nandishvara, who has many qualifications, which you can see at the bottom of the slide, and former professor of comparative religion at Madras University, after returning from a research expedition with an anthropological team in Australia, where he lived for some time with the native Aboriginal community, described his experience. I would suggest that if a civilization to be defined by the degree of polishing of an individual's mind and the building of his or her character, and if that culture reflects the measure of our self-discipline as well as our level of consciousness, then the Australian Aboriginals are actually one of the most civilized and highly cultured peoples in the world. The elders informed Nandishvara, for example, that Aboriginals describe the progression of human consciousness after death as survival in infinity, of contact with the infinitude of cosmic consciousness, which continues to expand after death until it is coextensive with it, until it literally becomes it. Dr. Nandishvara concluded that this state is echoed in the Tibetan Book of the Dead and known by Hindus and Buddhists as Samadhi. The Aboriginals call this state the dream time. From their accounts, compared to the former, these states are the same. The call of the elders is always to walk with, to walk in silence. It is so simple. Is it not the state that Madame Blavatsky continues to remind us to cultivate? This advice is perhaps the key to how to walk with an empty mind, an open heart and mind, a mindset of inner inquiry as opposed to an N about query, an activated Buddhic intuitive mind, not a voyeuristic tourist mind. Indigenous cultures often remark about Western people, you ask too many questions, have too many opinions about everything, just sit and be with us, observe. Is stanza 1 therefore a reminder of our real values, of how to live here and now, echoed perhaps, if we look more closely, in this, our Australian Dreamtime stories, of what our journey is really about, of what really matters, how to be with what Hugh Sherman calls in a message ahead of its time, as quoted in the Theosophist of May 1991, the jungle quality of the secret doctrine, of life itself, like the precious lifeblood, water, which we are blinded to, polluting it, yet which still continues to offer itself to us, bubbling up from the very ground we stand on. We need not look elsewhere in the universe for water. Did not two prominent theosophists, C.W. Leadbeater and Geoffrey Hodgson, also postulate that the future race of humanity would be on what is now known as Australia and New Zealand? May we intuit our way forward as we adventure into stanza 2 and be not impatient with its likeness to stanza 1 either. The proem prepares us by reminding us of patience, allowing for the unfolding of the story as if it were a cut diamond, each cut adding ever so slightly another angled view into the story. It is indeed the Australian Aboriginal way of learning, through deep listening, observation, deep reflection, dadiri, in the daily river language of the Northern Territory. Dr. Nandishvara concluded from his conversations with Aboriginal shamans and spiritual elders that their spiritual tradition is highly advanced and that their religious beliefs, held together with sky and earth philosophies, are parallel with those found in the various branches of the perennial philosophy. I shall let Miriam Rose have the final word with this lovely analogy of our learning. Dr. Miriam Rose Ungermer Baumann speaks 5 local languages along with English and is responsible for establishing a well-known and successful arts centre in Northern Territory. She is 2021 Senior Australian of the Year, an educator and artist. And she says, "My people are not threatened by silence. They are completely at home in it. They've lived for thousands of years with nature's quietness. It is natural that we feel close to the Creator. Our Aboriginal culture has taught us to be still and to wait. We don't mind waiting because we want things to be done with care. We don't like to hurry. There is nothing more important than what we are attending to. There is nothing more urgent that we must hurry away for. We don't worry. We know that in time and in spirit of Dadiri, that deep listening and quiet stillness, His way will be clear. We are river people. We cannot hurry the river. We have to move with its current and understand its ways. There is struggle for all of us, but we, unlike many Westerners, have not lost our spirit of Dadiri. I believe that the spirit of Dadiri that we have to offer to the world will help you Westerners to blossom and grow, not just within ourselves, but within our nation as well. Many thanks to all of you, fellow intuitors, deep listeners, students of philosophy, creators and artists of life and all. May we remember these words. Theosophy lives. Let us walk this study with the spirit of Dadiri, the voice in the silence, the Dharma. May these mantras too, so often chanted or recited in our circles, summarize all of the above and maybe have a different new meaning to us. Gate gate, gone, gone, gone to the other shore beyond of what? Oh, what an awakening, all hail. Or Asatoma Sadgamaya. From the unreal, lead me to the real. From the darkness, lead me to the light. From death, lead me to immortality. Thank you. And thank you, Daria, for your translation. It was beautiful.
Большое спасибо, Эстер, за ваш творческий подход.
Thank you so much, dear Esther, for your creative approach to description of the first stanza. Of course, when we gather to hold the thought of the secret doctrine, and we would like to be in this material, in the secret doctrine, in commentaries, and in thoughts, in preciseness that HPB told us about. Thank you so much. And we introduce the next speaker, Barry Bowden, National Lecturer of the Theosophical Society, member of the Theosophical Society of Australia. Welcome.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for having me tonight and inviting me to be part of this. And it is such a great thing. I mean, it's sort of interesting how technology works today, that we can be together on the other side of the world with you all. To move on to the stanzas, and first forget about conceiving or picturing what stanza one is about. It is one of the most abstract times of the universe. Just coming out of the night of Brahman, its most tenuous state. Everything is stated in a negative or passive state. Nothing was, but is full of potential for another journey into form and limited existence. The eternal parent, space in brackets, wrapped in her ever-invisible robes, had slumbered once again for 7 eternities. Space is the one constant of the universe that isn't dependent on anything. It would also seem that cyclic law is also constant. And as it says, that wrapped again in her ever invisible robes, had slumbered once again for 7 eternities. It shows us that there is motion even when there is no change. Motion is also inherent in order. Space, cyclicity, and order, these are also the drivers of the manifested universe. The universe, these qualities, are also trying to manifest in our personal lives, as we have within us everything it takes to make a universe. Although there would be a better word somewhere, the number 7, through the 7 cycles or eternities, brings order. The order seems to continue to spin off aspects of itself and become inherent in manifestation. And again, to have order, there must be chaos. These forces create, sustain, and destroy, which is part of cyclicity. Time was not, for it lay asleep in the infinite bosom of duration. Time was not, and in some ways we could say it never was. Its existence is so continuous, reliant on passing events in our life. The more events there are in our life, the faster time appears to pass. With fewer events, time slows down. When we drive on a familiar road, it seems to take less time to travel. It seems to take a long time on the road at night that we don't know. It depends on our senses, not time. In a world where the mind is still, the perception of time vanishes. So naturally, time did not exist before manifestation. It is worth keeping in mind that there is only an eternal now. Universal mind was not, for there was no ahi to contain it. Interesting looking at manifestation at the start point, moving down into manifestation. The various hierarchical beings that make manifestation possible are not there either. Yet, as they come into being, they slowly make it possible for more of these beings to manifest on the lower worlds, all bound together by unity. It is a unity where they are all aware of each other and the role of the great unfolding plan. All that is made possible by the universal mind within the human being lies the capacity of various vehicles of consciousness, and they hold the ability to awaken and produce consciousness on those respective levels. The 7 ways to bliss were not. The great causes of misery were not. For there was no one to produce and get ensnared by them. It is worth noting here that as a system unfolds itself into an objective universe, the same patterns happen when it dissolves again. The pattern is valid in all cycles. Only difference is that everything has evolved qualities from potentialities since passing an invisible point coming down into matter. There is so much drama in the worldly life of evolution, as we have our brothers, the animal kingdom, beside us, though not valued now. Having lost sight, we should guide and nurture our younger brothers, not create atrocities against them. Then there are also the insect, vegetable and mineral kingdoms, all of which we use as though there is no tomorrow. Sometimes it is worth looking at the negative or passive and choose the positive in action. It is an action that is positive. To aid the overall evolution marked by remarkable growth of the lower intellect, not yet checked by the spiritual. These are all causes of misery and suffering, which is the engine that drives spiritual evolution. In this cycle, the mind will become spiritualized. The way has already started with studies of philosophy and psychology. However, this is all relative to reality. The lower intellect can never realize the truth. A quote from collected writings by H.P. Blavatsky may help understand. By reason of the extraordinary growth of the human intellect and the development in our age of the 5th principle, manas, in man, its rapid progress has paralysed spiritual perception. It is at the expense of wisdom that the intellect generally lives, and mankind is quite unprepared in its present condition to comprehend the awful drama of human disobedience to natural laws and the subsequent fall as a result. It can only be hinted at in its place. The reference for that is volume 4. 14, page 333. Darkness alone filled the boundless hall. For father, mother and son were once more one. And the son had not yet awakened for the new wheel and his pilgrimage thereon. There is inherent necessity for the type of polarization in principles. In other words, a negative and a positive, as in light and darkness, father and mother. The resultant son makes the Trinity. So also the transformation of light into darkness and darkness into light. Absolute light is darkness. Also, the sun's pilgrimage through the manifested worlds, the sun would seem to have some relation to Fohat. It is stated that Fohat electrifies every atom into life. The seven sublime lords and the seven truths have ceased to be. And the universe, the sun of necessity, was immersed in para nishpana. To outbreathe by that which is, and yet is naught, was. They were yet to be born, as the sun was in a state of oneness, where spirit and matter are one. The third object is relative of paradoxes, which the spiritual is built upon, as words can never convey the meaning in abstract terms. Paradoxes befuddle the mind and cause it to, because it is beyond the form world. Paranishpana, non-being, which is unimaginable to us, yet is natural in its state. Sometimes letting go of knowing, we come to a nearer appreciation of the abstract. It would seem illogical and yet unknown, yet the unknown impresses itself when we surrender the known. In deeper aspects of consciousness, we become what we contemplate. There is always the known and the knower. In higher states of formlessness, there is one, the knower united with the known. The process of understanding reveals itself in the one consciousness. The causes of existence have been done away with. The visible that was and the invisible that is rested in eternal non-being. Restlessness of a separate life drenched with desires was not. Peace eternal reigned supreme. Without the burden of personal self, it is indeed easy. The idea of non-being is challenging to fathom. However, it is one of the higher states. What we often forget is that when we rise to the states of consciousness, it changes the number of dimensions of consciousness. Each dimension adds another degree of consciousness that the lower can never know. The only way to know is to experience. Alone, the one form of existence, stretched boundless, infinite, causeless in dream, in sleep, and life pulsated, unconscious in universal space throughout that all sense, just sensed by the open eye of Dangma. Not all beings sleep. It is perhaps symbolic of the silent watcher of Earth's progressive cycles, forever watching, but never the participant. Fascinating to contemplate these things in meditation. The abstract knowledge forms the basis of manifested worlds today. The universe runs to a rhythm, and all that is in harmony with it likewise acts naturally with it and for it. Nature regulates herself effortlessly all around us. It reminds me of a quote from a German poet and scientist, Goethe. Nature whispers to us constantly, but betrays none of her secrets. The manifested universe is so complex to the lower intellect of the human being, yet the infinite mind runs effortlessly. The problem is trying to keep up with the details of something so huge, yet the massive entity has one mind rather than billions of small minds. Our role is to be part of that one mind in our efforts. But where was Dhamma when the alaya of the universe was in Paramatha and the great wheel was the Anapuddaka? Dhamma means purified spirit. The eye of Dhamma is the same term for the eye of Shiva. The perception through the open eye, it would be the same perception of the purified spirit, which again has a reaction to the watcher, a relation, to the watcher. Constantly aware but never acting. The great wheel was Anapuddaka. Perhaps Anapuddaka is the centre of the wheel for this cycle. Such a mystically profound phase, it sometimes seems wrong to analyse something so profound. Anapuddaka has been called the eye maker. It is bathed in absolute unity, a contradiction again. Paradoxes are made of this framework. The eye maker, understood in the lower worlds, that analyses something, is to be separate from it. No one can ever attain to understanding while we adopt this view. It is better to try to merge ourselves in contemplation with some of these great subjects. The certainty is the lower intellect, as our telescope, we will always look through illusion. These significant passages are so profound that we honour ourselves to study them. Thank you, everybody.
Господин Боуден, огромное
Dear
спасибо.
Bowden, Mr. Bowden, thank you so much for your deep revelations from your report. And it's so important what you meant by your last phrase. It's an honor for us to touch upon this knowledge and to study them. It's so important, such an important thought. Thank you. For the first answer, I invite the candidate of Philosophical Studies, professor of Moscow Aviation Institute, Moscow, Russia, Kolganov Sergey Vitalyevich. Welcome. Good afternoon, good evening, dear friends. Let me I wish you all the best on the Catholic Christmas that is celebrated by all Catholics and most Protestant churches, and I'd like to thank organizers and interpreters. The first stanza of the Dzyan book, put forward by HPB in The Secret Doctrine, let us move forward to learn about the high spiritual reality and put aside the world of material objects. We've been reading right here the following. The spirit is the first differentiation of that causeless cause of the spirit and the matter. As esoteric catechesis teaches us, it's not boundless without anything, and not everything filled without borders. As for boundless emptiness, I'd like to point it to the researcher in the book Root Stanzas about the Middle, in which the great Narajuna gives us 18 ways to describe this concept. And if we stop our attention at the world of matter right now, of course, it's much closer and much more understandable to most people, and material, visible world cannot be ignored, as the physical body is materialistic, and everything that is our everyday reality. These are material forms of revelation. And it's impossible to leave the material world in full, because otherwise we would have to reject love for world in all its revelations. It goes out of the definition of the world as process where potentialities of being are relevant. But always being too materialistic does not let us develop and move forward and go to the following page of our evolution. There are people who are come towards all materialistic because they understand that it's not all about the world, that there is more subtle matter that is for the most people something irrelevant. Only by this wise choice a person can understand that actually the world has many dimensions and different planes of being. Motion, space, time. We can also add structurality here. As we know, appear to be integral characteristics of the world of matter, that is, its properties without which matter does not exist. The first three properties of matter are also given in this stanza. In words, the appearance and disappearance of the universe are depicted as exhalation and inhalation of the great breath, which is eternal, and being movement is one of the three symbols of the absolute. The other two are abstract space and duration or time. Material forms or structures can be touched, seen, felt by all five senses, but how difficult it is to get attached to something invisible, especially when a person is focused on the outside. And as long as a person is attached only to this side of life, he will not be able to know the reality of its other sides. As soon as a person begins to develop spiritual qualities in himself, discovers secrets of life through spiritual literature, for example, the material in his life does not exactly recede into the background, but takes its proper place and also becomes not so significant. The material is changeable and is doomed to destruction, and by this fact life seems to tell the right way. We need to pay attention to the spiritual because it's eternal and material is temporary. Max Handel, a great connoisseur of H.P. Blavatsky's creations, points out the primacy of spiritual in relation to the material. In his book, The Cosmogonic Concept of Rosicrucians, he says, thus the higher worlds are worlds of causes, worlds of forces, and we cannot really understand the physical world without knowing others and without understanding forces and causes in relation to which all material things are only a consequence. As for the reality of these higher worlds, in comparison with the reality of the physical world, strange as it may seem, these higher worlds, which for most seem to be mirages, are more stable and indestructible than objects in the physical world. The problem of the correct reflection of reality through consciousness as the fifth inherent property of matter is that we are not dealing with the external world itself, but with our perception of this world. We cannot go beyond anthropomorphic forms in the representation of reality and understand what is behind them. For the first time, in a consistent form, it was formulated by Immanuel Kant, who separated phenomena, what we perceive, from things in themselves, what is behind the phenomena. Kant proved very convincingly that there are certain things in themselves behind phenomena, but already Fichte and later the Neo-Kantians all actually rejected the doctrine of things in themselves, focusing on the phenomenology of the cognizing subject. The more philosophers in the 20th century went away from religion and were immersing themselves in understanding achievements of science, the more they began to confirm the idea of Nikolai Berdyaev, the Russian philosopher. Philosophy can exist only if philosophical intuition is recognized, and every significant and genuine philosopher has his original intuition. Neither the dogmas of religion nor the truths of science can change this intuition and replace them. The problem of the nature of perceived reality is the problem of what is beyond our senses and theory. Is there anything behind our feelings at all? Or, as the philosophy of Advaita Vedanta, philosopher Shankara asserts, the God is the only reality devoid of its parts, and everything else is just an illusion, which is entirely subject to karmic law. Modern Western philosophy prefers not to arrange such disputes because it considers it impossible to learn anything useful from them. The reality perceived through sensations is accepted as the limit of the real, and the problem of the nature of the cognizable reality passes into the problem of the nature of theoretical reality, or what is behind theoretical assumptions. In quantum mechanics, for example, we have a wave function, which is the main characteristic of a quantum object. Some believe that the wave function reflects some real-world field, others that it reflects the probabilistic behavior of individual quantum objects, and the third ones that it displays the statistical properties of large complexes or ensembles of quantum physics. All that we know with absolute certainty is the mathematical properties of the wave function and its emission spectra, while it is impossible to go beyond the limits of what is presented. The problem of correspondence of knowledge and reality is that our language, or the way of interpretation, does not always simply copy the external reality. Often the nature of correspondence is complicated by everyday concepts, equations, and formulas. For example, what and how do multidimensional spaces of linear algebra or irrational numbers correspond to? What do ordinary real numbers correspond to? It's quite easy to answer some of the questions posed and indicate type of correspondence, while it's impossible to do this for others, since the objects given play only an instrumental role. They are a way to describe, to convey, to understand a certain process, so that our mind can perceive the information received and operate on it. As for the mentioned concept of the eye of Dagma, In this first stanza of the book of Zion, it's worth nothing that one can approach the primary reality only by refining one's perception, and it happens as intuition develops. In the books of Living Ethics, Helena Rory reports the following about the ability to penetrate into the primary reality. We must remember that eternity cannot be short or long. It requires other names. It needs an above-ground language. Only in feeling knowledge can the concept of eternity be silently expressed. Probably some will say that it is impossible to guarantee which is reality and which is illusion. Indeed, it's possible to limit the realm of reality from illusion only by sensory awareness, but with refined perception one can comprehend reality. With starting points, we should revise what we are doing. Many people think that the name of sensuality somehow lowers the dignity of knowledge, and it's again a delusion, because the best scientists recognize the element of intuition. Intuition is the ability to receive information without using usual methods of cognitive activity. This concept can be explained through manifestations of supersensible perception, sensory awareness. Although the phenomenon of intuition itself has attracted attention to inquisitive minds since time immemorial, so its research was conducted by the most famous psychologist Carl Jung. Unlike other teachers, Sigmund Freud and Jung were interested in deeper, truly spiritual aspects of human existence, which play an important role in lives of both individuals and society as a whole. We often hear stories about famous people who sometimes acted on the hunch, more than once used intuition tips in their lives. In Jung's understanding, intuition is a natural part of the life of each of us and connects us with the collective unconscious, this huge container of information and meanings that cover the entire period of humanity existence. In everyday life, intuition manifests itself in two ways. It can be verbal, and it includes information in linguistic form or in visual manifestations based on touch forms. Verbal intuition includes information, often vague, obtained through senses. Verbal intuition includes clairvoyance and clairaudience. Clairvoyance is knowledge often suddenly acquired, which cannot be attributed to knowledge obtained by any ordinary means. People with clairvoyant abilities describe their experience as follows. Suddenly, knowledge is revealed, which usually comes at the moment when it's necessary in order to solve a problem, complete a scientific job, and help anyone. Perhaps other clairvoyance is the most mysterious phenomenon of all types of verbal intuition. Clairvoyance is a visual image, sometimes abstract. Abstract images are often vague and difficult to understand. Concrete images usually show real-life people, places, and objects. Both abstract and concrete images can appear in parts, which makes it difficult to decipher their meaning. And finally, clairaudience is the most common type of verbal intuition. A person with this type of intuition has the feeling that he hears words or sentences from an obscure source. Such messages should not be confused with auditory hallucinations. Messages received through clairaudience are a kind of hint for a person in difficult life situation who alone await a treasure. And one more quote from Living Ethics. Cognition of fiery influences is distributed according to the senses. The first impression will be visible with all variety Then the hearing will join with the music of the spheres, with bells, with strings of nature. Then comes the refinement of touch with sensations of rhythm, heat, cold. The most difficult thing is with the sense of smell and taste. But Uruswati knows that what it means to hear the smell of a person at a long distance. Such a distinction is very rare, but going beyond the limits of three-dimensionality, it becomes accessible. What I'd like to highlight in this passage. Here, I would like to introduce the following words: cognition of higher influences. Then everything is more difficult with sense of smell and taste, but going beyond three-dimensionality. All it points to the possibility of joining to one more dimension, first for the allied, for a small number of people, and then for majority of people living on Earth. In the comments to the fourth sloka of the first stanza of the Book of Dhyan, there are such lines: for the undeveloped life of savage, any picture will first appear as a senseless chaos of stripes and colors, whereas the educated eye will immediately see a face or landscape. We should know that the human eye has been educated throughout the past epochs and is confirmed by the entire history of the development of the world art. This issue has been deeply studied by Russian scientists, for example, Rauschenbach and Kolganov. For example, they started development of painting and architecture. Non-verbal intuition is, as a rule, visual or sensory information that is not based on linguistic forms of perception. This type of intuition includes clairvoyance, which manifests itself through emotions, feelings, and physical sensations that are less clear than verbal intuition. People describe clairvoyance as a sudden sensation that brings an emotional pulse associated with an event in the past, present, or future. People with this gift can, for example, feel danger while being in certain places, or they are capable of showing a high degree of empathy, feeling the emotional state of other people with their whole being. The further evolution of humanity is certainly connected with development of such higher types of perception of reality. Here's the following statement from the book, The Teachings of the Temple, revealing the evolutionary aspect of perception of other dimensions. The next abstract. The current human race has only 5 active sense organs. The 6th sub-race will have 6 fully developed sense organs, and the 7th will have a synthetic organ that will combine properties of these 6 organs together with the properties of the 7th. The present atrophied pineal gland will be more active in the 6th sub-race and will become the organ through which the Kundalini energy will function. Changes are noticeable in many modern children. Those who notice such changes believe that they are signs of developing the 6th sense organ, the pineal gland. The changes that occur in children and some older representatives of the human race are continuing the current abilities of sight and hearing, since they have nature of clairvoyance and clairaudience to a great extent, and qualities according to that are developed in humanity of the last races of the 5th sub-race and will be completely at the disposal of people of the 6th sub-race. This quote contains so much of what is being planned as the further evolution of man, and it may become the topic for separate study. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much, Sergey Vitalyevich. Thank you for paying attention to this single source of knowledge. Through Mahatma teachings, it was gained, that is, teachings of the Temple, the Secret Doctrine. Thank you so much. And we invite then our next speaker, Catalina Isaza Cantor, Theosophical Society of Colombia, AGR Theosophical Academy, are the international headquarters of the Theosophical Society. We're listening to you.
Greetings to all fellow Theosophists. I thank Eugenia and Adamant Lodge for this invitation to participate in this seminar where members from all latitudes study the secret doctrine. And thanks also to all the workers that make this meeting possible, the translators, everyone. The study of the secret doctrine provides a broad and deep vision of the universe and thus of ourselves. For us, it is said in the secret doctrine itself, as is the inner, so is the outer. As is above, so is below. There is but one life. So to study the secret doctrine is a transcendent experience, bordering the poetic, mystical, and the frontier of the intelligible. Words are limitless to express what we really need, as is the case of the postulates of the stanza 1, of which we present today an overview. Nevertheless, within the limitations of language and my own understanding, I will share some reflections of it. First of all, let us remember that the word Dzyan is interpreted as contemplation or knowledge through meditation. Therefore, an attitude of deep meditation is fundamental to approach its understanding. One of the keys to reading the secret doctrine mentioned by HPB is intuition. Through a purified and open mind, HPB points out in the poem the following. It must be remembered that all these stanzas appeal to the inner faculties rather than to the ordinary comprehension of the physical brain. I believe that any study we undertake must transcend the mere intellectual complacency of the concrete mind, as Master K.H. said. Truths and mysteries of occultism constitute a body of the highest spiritual importance, at once profound and practical for the world at large. Yet, it is not as a mere addition to the tangled mass of theory or speculation in the world of science that they are being given to you, but for their practical bearing on the interest of mankind. Through study meditation, we can transcend the doctrine of the eye towards the doctrine of the heart. In applying the teachings relating to the cosmos to the human being, we can use the secret doctrine as a spiritual training. We should undertake its study, keeping in mind what the voice of the silence warns us. Be of clean heart before you start of your journey. Before you take the first step, learn to discern the real from the false, the ever-fleeting from the everlasting, to separate head learning from soul wisdom, the eye from the heart doctrine. Look within. You are Buddha. HPB gives us the secret doctrine to raise our consciousness to the to the bodic plane. Only through intuition could we glimpse something to enlighten us. The stanza 1, the night of the universe, presents the state before manifestation, Mahapralaya, in which there is no differentiation. As mentioned in the first proposition, an omnipresent, boundless, immutable principle on which all speculation is impossible, since it transcends the power of human conception. It is beyond the range and reach of thought, unthinkable and unspeakable. And in the commentary to the Sloka 9 of the stanza 1, we can read also, man, unable to form a single concept except in terms of empirical phenomena, is powerless from the very constitution of his being to raise the veil that shrouds the majesty of the Absolute. Only the liberated spirit is able to faintly realize the nature of the source whence it sprung and whither it must eventually return. The finite cannot conceive the infinite. It is impossible to unravel the hidden meaning of what we read unless we meditate on it and reach a state of self-purification. The deepest truths cannot be expressed in words. They must be experienced. The abandonment of all sense of self-importance is necessary. We must become one with the teaching. Analogous to what the first stanza describes, it is essential to put our sense and our mind into a state of pralaya, so that understanding can come into our being. Meditate on it deeply and be in a state of eternity and universal sense in which the mind can be silent. The first stanza describes the state of the one all during pralaya, before the first flutter of reawakening manifestation. Such a state can only be symbolized. To describe it is impossible, as settled in the proem. This stanza describes the state of non-being, for there is no manifestation yet. That absolute of Parabrahman, that non-being, the one beingness, is the only reality. There is no existence yet, for to exist implies being outside of it. The prefix ex, exist, that prefix means outside. So existence is circumscribed to the vehicles of manifestation with which we are identified, as long as we focus on the personal self, meaning I feel, I am, I want, I need, etc. We will never leave the human level and realize the divinity within us, that idea of eternal non-being, which is the one being. And that idea will appear a paradox to anyone who does not remember that we limit our ideas of being to our present consciousness of existence, as stated in the commentary of the Sloka 7. It is a complex thing to grasp a state from the point of view of manifestation. But if we strive in study and meditation, we can gradually remove the veils. The only door to the adept's state of consciousness is to let go the vehicles of what we call the microcosm. Let us look at some ideas derived from each one of the 9 shlokas and its relevance to the path of self-realization. Slok 1 says, the eternal parent, Parabrahman, wrapped in her invisible robes, had slumbered once again for 7 eternities. The poem mentions, space is the one eternal thing that we can most easily imagine immovable in its abstraction and uninfluenced by either the presence or absence in it of an objective universe, causeless cause of both spiritual and matter. Everything else is in a state of pralaya, is unmanifested. It is the disk before the point in the center of the disk. The invisible clouds are the seed of matter and had slumbered again because it is a cyclical process. There is something vastly higher and unknowable from which we come and to which we are destined to return. And in the cyclical, time was not, for it lay asleep in the infinite bosom of duration, as presented in Slok 2. It is a timeless principle in which there is no sense of time, only a continuous experience of the now, in which one transcends all consciousness. It simply is. Light on the path says, live neither in the present nor the future, but in the eternal. This giant weed of self cannot flower there. As stated in the commentary of Slok 2, the present is only a mathematical line which divides that part of eternal duration, which we call the future, from that part, which we call the past. Then time is a mental construction. It needs consciousness to be perceived. And at this zero point of the stanza 1, prior to manifestation, there is no consciousness, there is no time. In the union, in the eternal present, the non-being, what remains, is something that our senses cannot even imagine, but which is in contact with the primordial in which universal mind was not. For there were no celestial beings to contain, hence manifested, as mentioned in Slok 3. During the long night of rest, when all the existences are dissolved, the universal mind remains as a permanent possibility of mental action. Only through a state of silence, calm and tranquility in which there is neither bliss nor misery, but only being. Slok 4 says, the 7 ways to bliss were not. The great causes of misery were not. For there was no one to produce and get ensnared by them. There is no one to produce them because there is no duality, no desire, and no limitations of matter inherent in manifestation. All that is there in a state of silence and mental darkness. Darkness alone filled the boundless all, for Father, Mother, and Son were once more one, and the Son had not yet awakened for the new will and his pilgrimage Theon. This is the statement of Slok 5 and is expressed in the Bible as, in the beginning, the raging ocean that covered everything was engulfed in total darkness. That is Genesis 1. Everything has ceased to exist. The 7 sublime lords and the 7 truths, as mentioned by Slok 6, had ceased to be. And the universe, the son of necessity, was immersed in Paranishpana, to be outbred by that which is, and yet is not was. It is a state in which there are no expectations, there are no desires or seeking of blessings or escape from suffering. And therefore, the child of necessity was immersed in absolute perfection. There were no causes, meaning creators of necessities. The third fundamental proposition of the poem reminds that the secret doctrine teaches the obligatory pilgrimage of every soul through the cycle of incarnation or necessity, in accordance with cyclic and karmic law. Then Shlok 7 says, the causes of existence had been done away with, the visible that was, and the invisible that is, rested in eternal non-being, the one being. The causes of separateness have been removed. The vehicles with which we identify ourselves no longer exist. There is a state of non-being, that state of spiritual realization. Alone, the one form of existence, stretched boundless, infinite, causeless, in dreamless sleep, and life pulsated unconscious in universal space. Throughout that all presence, which is sensed by the opened eye of Dharma, declares Shlok 8. It is a form of existence that is full, as a state of non-knowledge that goes beyond any state of mind, a perfect state of beingness. And this could be the answer when this stanza in Shloka 9 concludes asking, but where was Dharma, purified soul, when the Alaya of the universe was in Paramartha and the great will was Anupadaka? Well, to continue, let's say Dr. Taimi compares this state of the stanza 1 to the number 0, containing all numbers, an ultimate principle which is a harmonic synthesis of all opposites and integrates all principles, qualities, etc. 0 is the numerical sign of null value, the number of nothingness, and nothingness is indivisible. You cannot divide nothingness. From 0 then comes the 1. Before the manifestation, there is the disk, the 0, and then comes the point in the center, which is the number 1, the beginning of manifestation. The first necessarily presupposes something which, as per occultism, necessarily derives from the causeless cause. If all existence is derived from the omnipresent principle through the unity center or Laya center, the essential practice of the spiritual life must be a perception of the unity manifested in all life and harmonious behavior in accordance with it. Any serious study undertaking of any passage of the secret doctrine involves a transformation of the self, and in that sense is immensely practical because it urges us to unfold our higher mental faculties and prepare our being for access to higher mysteries. In the commentary of the Shlok 5, we read, how far we discern the light that shines in darkness depends upon our powers of vision. What is light to us is darkness to certain insects, and the eye of the clairvoyant sees illumination where the normal eye perceives only blackness. Light of Asia says, O Amitaya, the books teach darkness was at first of all, and Brahm, soul meditating in that night. Look not for Brahm and the beginning there, nor him nor any light shall any gazer see with mortal eyes, or any searcher know by mortal mind. Veil after veil will lift, but there must be veil upon veil behind. Then we must use intuition to lift veil after veil. And as written in the commentary of Slok 1 of the following stanza, the stanza 2, it is only with a mind clear and undarkened by personality and an assimilation of the merit of manifold existences devoted to being in its collectivity, the whole living and sentient universe, that one gets rid of personal existence, merging into, becoming one with the Absolute. Namaste. Thank you.
Дорогая Каталина, большое спасибо.
Dear Catalina, thank you so much for your review, for this deep penetration. I have little time left, dear friends, and nevertheless, I'd like to draw conclusions and to share several discoveries we've turned into presentation, and to understand how can we make these discoveries into the single thought, into the single system. I'd like to say sorry because it's a bit beyond the timetable and it's too long, but still thousands of Theosophists will watch this, so it's worth telling for those who have interest in works of HPB and other works. So first stanza, the Sloka 1 says that the eternal parent wrapped in her ever invisible robes had slumbered once again for seven eternities. Let's say right now, what is the cycle in numbers presented by HPB? If we put together the numbers from the number on the screen, there is 9, a symbol of spirit, and in total there are 15. There are in total 15 or 6 digits. 6 means matter. Zeros are the symbol of the world. They have their significance, and if we count all these digits together with zeros, we'll have 9 days of Brahma, in total 9 nights of Brahma, 360 days of Brahma is year of Brahma, and together 720 makes 9. Together there are 16 numbers in this counting, which makes 7 cycles containing 7 periods. There's the secret calculation that the HPB mentions. Here is the secret that should always be divisible by 7 or x. What is x? X is objective or objective world, different cycles. Let us see that the whole number of digits in the cycles make 9. 9 multiplied by 7 is 63, or 9 in sum. So till 7 eternities is the start of every plane of existence, state of differentiation from 9. Everything starts from the spirit. And the next secret are the robes. What are the robes? These are non-differentiated cosmic matters. It's not matter, it's spiritual idea of this matter. What are the robes? What they are? If we try to guess that there are robes described further, it's what will be revealed. And in this sloka, it's not revealed. So the first robe is timed. Everything starts with time when counting starts. Second one is Ahi. When time appears, then there is hierarchy of beings who are vehicles of the divine forces, breath of life, inhale and exhale. The third drop is universal mind, Mahat, the third principle. First, there are here because of that are accommodating the universal mind, and then as universal mind emerging. Rope 4, the 7 ways to the ends of suffering. A very important rope 4 is the shape. The first 3 time a human mind fall into fourth state, and there is the sevenfold in what? In the direction of ways to bliss, that is, the path is marked by out by the higher powers before the causes of suffering. Here, this path is given according to the following principle is above, so below. The highest must be first, both above and below. Row 5 is the great causes of suffering potentiality. 5 is the symbol of the man. The gods don't suffer, and nobody suffers. Rope 6, Father, Mother, and Son are one. Rope 7, the Son will awaken to the new will and travel on it. It's Buddhi. It's the son of the ray. So there is sevenfold nature. Every ray is sevenfold. Its movement. It's when awakening starts, when Vantara starts. So now let's see how this idea of ropes turns the characteristic of races into a certain concept of humanity, of human consciousness. Ropes 1 and 2 correspond to future of races 1 and 2, time and here, almost one state, simultaneous manifestation. Rope 3 is the future race 3, man becomes monadic. Agnishvadhas overshadow humanity with wisdom. Rope 4 is the future race 4. Humanity has reached the ideal form. Matter has acquired the densest state, the flowering of human genius. On the circle of races 4 and 7, the races are in the same sector. What does it mean? First, matter appears, race 4, and then the spirit, race 7. That is the way in form. A revelation from materialization to spirit. Rope 5 is the future race 5. After Atlantis came a new race of Aryans who were destined to give the basis for race 6 to come through great suffering. Rope 6, the future race 6. Father, Mother, and Son, race 6. The Buddhic race, namely the 3 principles, must merge into 6. As Helena Rarick writes, 4th, 5th, and 7th merge into 6. 6th principle will become wise. Rope 6, race 6. These are wise. Rope 7 is the future race 7, the sun who is awakened. A new cycle has begun. Race 7 ends the evolution of human, and the new cycle is beginning. So HPB in this sloka is telling about the Pythagorean triangle. 2, 3, 4. In some, they make up 1, 2, 3, 6, and plus 4, it's 10. So 7 in Pythagoras triangle is hidden. It's hidden movement. Sides of triangle, 3 sides and 4 sides. Together 12 or 3. What is 3? 3 worlds of form of the 4th dimension. And then they can be divided by the ray. The sevenfold nature means that the ray is moving, and any of these principles is revealing internal movement of the ray. So 7 can be multiplied by 1 sevenfold nature, 7 multiplied by 2, 5, 7 multiplied by 3, 3 septenaries, and 7 multiplied by 4 is 10, 4 septenaries. Altogether, 7, 5, 3, and 10 make up 7. 7 is x, sum of 4 periods is equal to 7. And here, the 7x is turning of the cross of life. First, it was material. These are vertical and horizontal lines. And when this movement of 7 from inside to outside made it spiritual. So the start is the internal changing, internal transformation till a certain cycle when karma will be revealed in 7 or will be the great 7. It's a great secret each of us has, or the secret of karma. That is the first sloka what is talking about. Second sloka is that what could be divided should have been duration that cannot be divided. HPB poses a question of what should exist inside time and space, and what should go beyond time and space. And we'll try to answer these questions, what it can be. We know that time is finite and duration is infinite, but if duration is there, then in places where nothing is, we can look at the image of what or what it can become. So let us put 2 points, points A and B. What is happening in the middle from A to B that is connecting point C is duration, or from A to B, it's a space, cyclic movement, and right now it's materialistic line. When this circle is divided into two, we see that the past, the future, the past, the present, and the future. The present is time, and commentaries of second sloka will have description of logoi, and we'll stop on that. The first logoi, what it is, it's the circle with point in the center without any particular features. The line is father and mother is where the second logo starts, containing the unrevealed word. Word is born from akasha sound, because sound is also revelation of thought unrevealed. It's revealed Mahat, and Mahat is what is connected by Fuhat. How Fuhat connects them is what we can do according to the higher mind. So let us see the 3 logoi described in the slide. First logos, word, and Mahat. But what should be beyond time and space? Inside there are Mahat, or mind, that is slumber until the cycle. And what is beyond time and space? It's the mind. When the new cycle starts, time starts. So Mahat, or the mind, defines the state where time emerges that was not, and there was only duration that was slumbering or being in calm state. So Sloka 3, HPB writes that universal mind was not, it was only some of states of mind. It's a state that contains everything. What can it be? This can be 3. First one is thought, second one is will, and third one is feelings. And merged together, they make up mind, or will, feelings, and will make up the mind. First, second, and 3 levels of Ahi. First one is Arupa, according to the planes of existence, we can see it. The second one is Ahi, nature going closer to Rupa, and the third one is sevenfold nature, that is Rupa. These are 7 initial rays going from the first logoi. He goes to all levels, but they reveal only in the 3rd level. So from the 3rd level, they become Manasaputras, those who can become people. And here we can suggest that all hierarchy, these divine subjects, they are inhalation and exhalation. Let us see. Contains the first 3 unrevealed planes, and P as the exhalation unites the 3 revealed planes, inhalation, exhalation, and the human being is built like that. Then mind or Razum in Russian, rise, the god of the sun. First, the humanity started working as the sun god. Let us see how Razum or mind can work as a mind, as a figure. Rise before Z, and then there is mind, Z is connecting revealed and unrevealed, the synthesis. We are in clarity when we create synthesis, and this understanding goes to a revelation of Ahi that let us see clearly and understand clearly when we unite heart and mind, and when we become rational, then the ray touches upon our consciousness and we get understanding. The 7-ray star is the symbol of Ahi Rupa, or for a 6-ray star is when Z is connecting basics of two triangles. So here are the first three levels, and human thought is also developed in the first three stages of development. Let us see how it's happening. The first stage is when the person can reason or divides. And the second stage is reflection, when he takes different thoughts and connects them. And the third stage is where the person learns to think. It's the highest level. So the first three levels correspond to the three thinking levels. As the first three levels of Ahi. And one more key moment from Ahi, that's from nature and according to its rules. First Ahi was creating the basis that will later be a conductor. What is this basis? They delegate not laws they have, they impose laws of nature. First, a respect for the higher forces was proclaimed, and the higher forces asked the lower ones what they could make. And the seventh ray star symbolizes this asking of the higher force to the lower force, and conductors started following what our lower forces impose. So the first stanza, Sloka 4, the seven ways to bliss were not. Let us see how the thought was moving and how this trajectory was moving from the single to the existence plane, the first sevenfold nature, then from the second to three, the second one, then until the third sevenfold, sublimity sevenfold nature, and let us see how these numbers go after one another. If we put all these numbers together, we will get the esoteric number 84 that is in Psalm 12. So what does it mean 12? 12 are 12 nidanas. So if nidanas are forces and every force is going from one state to another, what does it make? It puts them together, enlarges them, and puts them to the higher plane. How does it happen? It makes a conjunction between the opposites, then enlarges and gives impetus for the new stage. Let us see this concept one after another, clockwise, according to Nidanas, from first to 12 from tiger to ox, and anti-clockwise from ox to tiger, from 12 to 1 from tiger. Right now we are looking at the whole Nidana characteristic from 12 to 1 and vice versa, and see how they come across one another, where the opposites come across each other. There is an interesting trajectory where every Nidana has 12 number. 1 plus 12 is 13. They have 13, not 12, pardon. Tiger, hare, dragon, snake, horse, goat, monkey, rooster, dog, boar, mouse, and ox. They all have 13 in these opposite numbers merging together. So 13 is each nidana. In some, it's 4, and it's manifestation of internal state when it's manifested. So here we have the fourth dimension of volume vision, and 1 and 3 becomes the center of the thought, and balance emerges. When balance emerges, there is no suffering. Let us see, according to the planes of being, how the suffering disappears. Suffering is the physical plane. Reason is the solid and physical plane. A stop of suffering is the plane of creativity and destruction of causes of existence, and approach to the great truth, the plane of prototypes. Here the illusion disappears. At the plane of spirit, illusion is in paranirvana, and through prototypes plane, let us see how getting closer to spirit beyond forms. The sum of nidanas is based on 4 truths. 12 nidanas are 3, 4 truths are 7, so 7 paths to bliss they were not. Here is the sum of these notions. 4 truths are 4 planes of being. Next stanza is stanza 1, Sloka 5. Let us see how HPB puts forward correspondence Brahma's father, mother, and son. Accordingly, body, spirit, soul, and body. In cosmophysical sense, it's universe, planetary spirit, and human son. In spiritual sense, there are the following ways of corresponding, as you can see in the slide. Unknowable being, unknowable deity, planetary chain on earth, universe, planetary spirit and person, father, mother, and son, spirit, soul, and body. We can see that everything can be understood in the future and soul revealed as Brahma. In this sloka, HPB gives us state of three unmanifested logoses, logoi. First one is unrevealed father, second one is semi-revealed mother. The semi-revealed mother will become revealed when the sun of the universe emerges as the third logos that is manifest as the universe of sun. So that is the wheel, or that is the symbol of the world, start of a wheel movement. That is this finished cycle of Mahakalpa, our cycle, that is the full movement of 7 medals of growth. And evolution, day and night as main points, and dawn and dusk as quarters of the cycle. It's the finish of true consciousness that emerge when souls come together. What is the wheel? The wheel is the ring of the heart, of actions, of love, of cosmic magnet. Or unrevealed becomes revealed, and everything comes together as a wheel or the ring. And this time should give impetus to movement for the monad around the wheel, and the mind will become enlarged, expanded. This center of the universe and the person will become one, and by liberating from madness, liberating through the solid matter, the person will destroy all qualities that are in the physical plane. These are limitations of the mind. So we're going forward to Sloka 6 of Stanza 1. The 7 truths. The 7 truths are according to the 7 youths of the human race. The 4th truth is already there, and we're in 4th cycle. There was the 4th secret. Humanity right now is living through this 4th cycle. That is how evolution goes. It reveals this secret. 5th, 6th, and 7th cycles are not yet there, are not revealed. 5th, 6th, and 7th dimensions are according to Atma Buddha and the fourth one is the astral symbol. And according to the mind, let us see how these cycles correspond to principles of person. And 7th is Atma. 6th is a Buddhi. 6th cycle, the 5th one is the high manas. 5th one and the 4th is the lower manas, developing the 4th cycle, the 4th dimension of the 4th development of the lower consciousness of lower manas is the 4th dimension going to the higher triad. First, the spirit materializes, and by finishing 4, it goes upwards, and that is how the matter is spiritualized. And there is also sacred knowledge. Let's see what it is. If we put this 8 here, we'll know that the sacred knowledge, the hidden knowledge, is a connection between cause and effect at this point, or the cosmic book, uniting the high and the lower manas. The manas leads a person to liberation from the solid matter, and our universe is one of infinite universes. It is the chain, and these zeros and connection between these points, knowledge and synthesis, connection between the opposites, the cause and effect, the evil and good, light and darkness, and here is how the chain connecting them all goes.
Creative growth. So only your task to complete your teacher's task is something that awakens your mind and gives you an impulse to be creative. Now let us talk about 7 states. The cause of existence had always been. These 6 states are the visible that was before the last 7th state of the complete fusion was the existence. So this is the 7th state. This is the description of invisible that it. So the 6 disappeared, and then we have the desire to exist, which disappeared. This is Nidans, which disappeared, and Mayas, which disappeared, and as a result, your desire to exist disappears as well. Let us take a look at desires on the first level. This is the desire of the higher mind, that the desire to have a conscious life, which is the reflection of the God's idea. So this is the circle, which first has a point inside, then it expands into a circle, manadas, comes into existence or mind, and then there are 6 states of existence which make a cube. This is the symbol for our world to exist. The highest point here is the 7th point. This is our spiritual force or power. It's impossible to imagine that anything without a cause leads to that. Such an attempt leaves the mind to the limit of consciousness. So this is exactly the cause that causes the wheel of time and space to roll further. With the development of the pure desire, Buddha and the universal principle of desire acting on it, first they refine their thirst with one which is experienced on the lower 4 planes, which makes them once born again. They go on to the higher level and they attain the possibility to touch both planes, which became connected. They were able to go over all the barriers and thus attain their freedom. And then they get the higher meaning. The desire of higher orders become a spiritual form of the essence of the form. When you open 2 doors, that's new aspirations, high aspirations that you have with using the natural, intricate tools. So the foundation of our psychic energy is the initial energy and the fire. Those are 2 parts of this door that make it able to open this door. So, full realization of the truth can also come to a person only with the development of 6th sentence. This is your heart, this is your spirit. And in Kalachakra, this is the sector of Taurus. Let's take a look at this sector in greater detail. Here you can see numbers, which are 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, which is a Taurus section. This is the sound of or. If we put together the bull, the rat, mouse, and dogs, then you can get number 40. What's 40? That's the completion of the full cycle where the birth appears. Now you will see a lot of different interpretations of what 40 may look like in different philosophical systems and religions. So what's 40? 40 is your eternal memory, your understanding, your eternal light. This is exactly our internal ability to be creative and to show light. Light is our consciousness of only an internal existence, which penetrates all planes of existence. The rest is just an illusion. When a person becomes the creator, he manifests his individuality in the form of light. Then he lives this way and he becomes closer to the reflection of reality. And Maya plays no role here because the light has become a single being of the 7. And that's the main idea of this shloka. This is the light which became 8. Now let's talk about the next shloka. Dogma means a purified soul. But what is this state? What's the state that an open eye gives us an ability of spiritual intuition through which he gets direct and credible knowledge. Therefore, it is a state or a space in which spiritual intuition can get this credible knowledge. Dogma does not cognite itself. It shows all planes of prototypes. And the physical plane back then did not exist. And dogma was unable to feel anything because it was closed. The eye was closed. From the plane of unshown to unshown, we have one of the seventh state. This is the reason of the light and the reason. The light is the first glimpse of the undifferentiated world. Then we go on to the next level, the level of manifestation, which shows visible effect of the material universe in Akasha. Akasha, which is filled in with very intricate energies. This is the state of equilibrium. It looks like emptiness, but still it's full, and it shows us how to complete completeness. This is exactly the moment when Paranita comes to the fore. This is transcendental wisdom, which does not involve any discussions or any interpretations. The comprehension of Pramita is revealed through true information and knowledge, which exclude discussions. Then the open eye opens and gaps of consciousness disappear. Then Akasha appears. Akasha is a carrier of our psychic and spiritual memory. It goes through a certain way. First of all, this is transcendation, then it's purification, and then injection, a great future. The third state of the great future is the state of Akasha, or the memory of the spirit, which brings to the fore equilibrium. Then these gates open and the ray of the existence come to the fore. It does not get reflected. It does not get divided into small parts because the noise of Miyata exists. Then the highest speed of the sound comes to the fore, and as a result, this is the reason of presence. And then the dogma awakens. Dogma is the only power and the only guide to the internal way into our eternity. Love gives us a way to understand higher dimensions. It shows a way to true knowledge, which does not involve any discussions. By the force of love, prana makes the way easy and shining, defining the movements on the way as beamy and fast towards opening the eye. The first stanza of the ninth shloka talks us about the one unmanifested logos and the first logos. Here you can see the way they look, the one symbol, which is unmanifested logos, then the second manifested logo, and the 7 syllable logos. Matma is the universal mind, because this is as Brahma and Shiva, Vishnu. That's why it's a logos of different aspect. Mahat or Manas first are born as egoism, then it's born as self-feeling and secondary creation, the science creation, and then Mahat develops into self-consciousness. It takes the name of egoism. Mahat and Mahana now are in the state of equilibriums. That's why they're the descent of Alaya. Alaya, the 3 states, meaning the way to go into the next level. This is the way of the Jesus Christ, or the light, the beginning, a new cycle, the beginning of the journey, the start, when merging in of Alaya gives this force moving onto the next plane. Shloka 9 describe a manifested state of the 9 creation. Those are 3, 3, 4's powers. So 3 multiplies 3 gives 9. This is the single state which are ready to give an impetus to start a new cycle. What's 9? 9 are 7 hidden planes of being, and there are 2 in external space, Alaya and Anupadaka, in which 2 forces keep their sublimity, and when the cycle comes, they will become a form of movement. Where was Dogma when Alaya of the universe was the Brahma and the great will was Anupadaka? Dogma was in the place where there were the builders. Dogma was in a place where there was silence. Dogma in a place where there was hearing, the hidden sublimity of the unmanifested 9th creation of the universe. The first stanza told us about the reasons for sounds to appear. Sound is future, ether, substance. It first gathers the potential space of sound. It's really hard to show its trajectory because this does not exist that. But yet what you can do is to come up with a projection. All of us, we all have forms, and we can hear the first sound. So we have the ability to see love. The first stanza teaches just that. It's about the projection of the first sound of love. Thank you very much. Today, we had very powerful speakers. We talked about the first stanza, and the first stanza that we talked about that and allowed us to have this discussion. We focused on these ideas. It gave us the foundation to say that today we build a certain system. Dear friends, dear Theosophers, those who study and who were really captured and involved with the discussion of the first stanza, those who were attentive, those who showed respect to those who were doing that, and those who stayed us all the way, I would like to express my gratitude to all of you. We are not going to say goodbye to each other. We are going to send our great wishes to you on the New Year and Christmas. The next year we start from the first stanza of the first shloka, because we're going to host 2 more seminars on the 13th of January. It's online class. And then later we are going to have a new seminar. We are going to be within new powers of the Black Tiger. Thank you very much for being with us today. Please leave your suggestions and comments. And now I will give the final word to Vladimir Vladimirovich to deliver his remarks. Thank you very much for those who were attentive and stayed with us through all the session. To be attentive is really hard, because today there are certain energies, and during any class, it actually so. It's not always easy to stay attentive. Today, while I was listening to all of you, I arrived at the conclusion. I got a certain understanding attached today to a lot of things. Those were the powers that should enable us to detach ourselves from the research world, to abstract from all of that, to use our own understanding to interpret stanza. Thank you very much. We will be happy to see you next year. We are in the sector. This is the sector of the beginning, of the birth of a spiritual person. So let us be reborn once again. Thank you very much. See you on the 13th and 29th of January. Love and light to you. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
The Secret Doctrine by Blavatsky. Dedicated to all true Theosophists. Book of the 3rd millennium.
Blavatsky only